Chapter 1, The Assignment. Claire Williams stared at her editor, a mix of disbelief and excitement dancing in her hazel eyes. She had expected another mundane city beat assignment, not a trip to a picturesque small town. Maplewood? Claire repeated, her voice tinged with curiosity. Yes, her editor, Janet, confirmed, leaning back in her chair. The annual Autumn Festival is a big deal there. Think of it as a Hallmark movie brought to life. It's your job to capture the essence of it all, the people, the traditions, the charm. Claire's mind raced. She had been yearning for something different, something that would rekindle her passion for journalism. This seemed like the perfect opportunity. All right, she agreed, a determined smile forming. I'll do it. The drive to Maplewood was nothing short of breathtaking. Claire wound through scenic country roads flanked by trees dressed in vibrant autumn hues of red, orange, and gold. The crisp air, a stark contrast to the city's smog, invigorated her. As she drove into the town, Claire was greeted by a sign that read, "Welcome to Maplewood, where every leaf tells a story." She couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement. Claire checked into the Maplewood Inn, a charming bed and breakfast run by an elderly couple, Betty and Harold Thompson. Betty, with her silver hair and warm smile, handed Claire a set of keys. "Welcome, dear," Betty said. "You must be here for the festival. You'll love it, Maplewood is at its best this time of year." "I'm looking forward to it," Claire replied, her excitement growing. After settling into her cozy room with its quilted bedspread and antique furniture, Claire decided to explore the town. She wandered down Main Street, admiring the quaint shops and cafes, each one adorned with fall decorations. Her first stop was the Maplewood Library, a red brick building covered in ivy. Inside, the scent of old books mingled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee from a small cafe in the corner. Claire's eyes scanned the room, eventually landing on a tall, bespectacled man arranging books on a shelf. "Hi," she ventured, walking up to him. "I'm Claire Williams, a journalist covering the Autumn Festival." The man turned, offering a polite smile. "Mark Taylor. I'm the town librarian. Welcome to Maplewood." "Thanks," Claire replied. "I was hoping to learn more about the festival and the town's history." Mark's eyes lit up. "You've come to the right place. Maplewood has a rich history, and the festival is a beloved tradition. How about we start with a tour of the library?" As Mark guided Claire through the library, he shared stories of the town's founding families, local legends, and the origins of the Autumn Festival. Claire found herself captivated not only by the stories but also by Mark's passion and knowledge. "The festival started over a century ago," Mark explained, "as a way to celebrate the harvest and the beauty of the season. It's grown since then, but it's still very much a community event." Claire took notes, her mind already buzzing with ideas for her article. They moved to the cafe area, where Mark insisted on treating her to a slice of homemade apple pie. As they sat by a window overlooking the town square, Claire felt a sense of contentment. The hustle and bustle of the city seemed worlds away, replaced by the serene charm of Maplewood. Over the next few days, Claire immersed herself in the festival preparations. She interviewed local artisans, attended pumpkin carving contests, and marveled at the intricate scarecrows that lined the streets. Everywhere she went, she was met with warmth and hospitality. One evening, as she strolled through the town square, Mark joined her. They watched as children played in the leaves, their laughter echoing through the crisp air. "You seem to be enjoying Maplewood," Mark observed. "I am," Claire admitted. "It's a refreshing change from the city. People here seem genuinely happy." Mark nodded. "There's something special about this place. It has a way of making you slow down and appreciate the simple things." Claire glanced at him, noting the sincerity in his eyes. "I can see why you love it here." As they continued their walk, Claire realized that Maplewood was beginning to feel like more than just an assignment. It was becoming a place where she felt at home, where every leaf truly did tell a story. That night, Claire returned to the inn and began drafting her first article. She wrote about the town's history, the festival's traditions, and the vibrant community spirit. But as she typed, her thoughts kept drifting back to Mark and the sense of belonging she felt when she was with him. Claire smiled to herself. Maplewood was proving to be more than just a story. It was an unexpected journey of discovery, and perhaps, the beginning of something beautiful. Chapter 2, A Warm Welcome. The morning sun bathed Maplewood in a golden light as Claire Williams woke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window. She stretched and took a deep breath, savoring the crisp autumn air that filtered through the curtains. Today was her first full day in the town, and she was eager to dive into the festival preparations and get to know the locals better. After a hearty breakfast prepared by Betty, Claire set out to explore the town. Her first stop was the local bakery, Sweet Maple Delights, which Betty had highly recommended. As she walked in, the aroma of freshly baked goods enveloped her, making her mouth water. "Good morning," a cheerful voice called out. Claire turned to see a woman in her mid-50s with rosy cheeks and flour-dusted hands. "Hi there," Claire replied. "I'm Claire Williams, a journalist covering the Autumn Festival." "Welcome, Claire." "I'm Martha," the woman said with a warm smile. "What brings you to our little bakery?" "I've heard amazing things about your pastries," Claire said. "I thought I'd start my day with something sweet." Martha beamed. "You've come to the right place. Our maple scones are a town favorite. Would you like to try one?" "Absolutely," Claire agreed. As Martha packed the scone, she shared stories about the bakery's history and its role in the festival. "We've been here for over 30 years, she said proudly. "My husband and I started this place right after we got married. Every year, we bake special treats for the festival, and it's always a hit." Claire took a bite of the scone and closed her eyes in delight. "This is incredible," she said. "I can see why it's a favorite." Martha laughed. "Thank you, dear. Enjoy your day, and if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Claire continued her exploration, visiting various shops and meeting more of the friendly townsfolk. At the flower shop, she met Lily, a young woman with a passion for floral arrangements, who was busy creating stunning autumn bouquets for the festival. At the general store, she chatted with Sam, an elderly man with a wealth of knowledge about the town's history. Everywhere she went, Claire was struck by the sense of community and the genuine warmth of the people. Maplewood felt like a place where everyone knew each other and looked out for one another, a stark contrast to the anonymity of the city. In the afternoon, Claire decided to visit the town square, where the festival preparations were in full swing. She saw Mark Taylor there, coordinating with volunteers to set up stalls and decorations. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Claire! How's the article coming along?" he called out. "It's coming together nicely," she replied, walking over to him. "I've met so many wonderful people already. This town is amazing." Mark's eyes twinkled with pride. "I'm glad you think so. Maplewood has a way of making people feel at home." They walked through the square together, and Mark introduced Claire to more of the festival organizers. She met Jenny, a spirited woman in charge of the children's activities, and Tom, the local farmer who provided pumpkins for the carving contest. As they talked, Claire felt a growing sense of connection to the town. It wasn't just the picturesque scenery or the charming traditions, it was the people and their stories that made Maplewood special. That evening, Mark invited Claire to join him and a few other townsfolk for a casual dinner at the local pub, the Maple Leaf. It was a cozy place with wooden beams and a roaring fireplace, the perfect setting for an autumn evening. As they settled into a corner booth, Claire felt a sense of camaraderie with her new friends. They shared stories, laughter, and delicious food, and for the first time in a long while, Claire felt truly at ease. "Tell us more about your life in the city," Jenny urged. "It must be so exciting." Claire smiled, though her thoughts had been shifting since she arrived in Maplewood. "It has its moments," she admitted. "But it can also be overwhelming. Coming here has been a refreshing change." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes, a change of pace is exactly what we need to gain perspective." Claire looked around the table at the faces of the people she was beginning to care about. She realized that Maplewood was offering her more than just a story, it was giving her a glimpse of a different way of life, one that was rich in community and connection. As the evening drew to a close, Claire walked back to the inn with Mark. The night was cool, and the stars shone brightly overhead. They walked in comfortable silence, the sound of their footsteps mingling with the rustling of leaves. "Thank you for inviting me tonight," Claire said softly. "It's been wonderful getting to know everyone." "I'm glad you came," Mark replied. "You're already becoming a part of our community." Claire smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart. Maplewood was starting to feel like home, and she couldn't wait to see what the rest of her time here would bring. As she settled into bed that night, Claire reflected on the day's events. The warmth and hospitality of the townsfolk had made her feel welcome in a way she hadn't expected. She drifted off to sleep with a sense of contentment, eager for the days to come and the stories yet to be written. Chapter 3: Autumn Festival. The day of the Autumn Festival dawned clear and bright, with the sky painted in shades of soft blue and gold. Claire Williams woke early, her excitement bubbling over as she prepared for the day. She dressed warmly, layering a cozy sweater over her shirt and pulling on her favorite pair of jeans. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she felt a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in years. Betty greeted her in the dining room with a steaming cup of coffee and a plate of pancakes drizzled with maple syrup. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. "Absolutely," Claire replied, taking a sip of the rich coffee. "I can't wait to see everything." "Well, you're in for a treat," Betty said. "The Autumn Festival is the highlight of the year. Everyone in town has been working hard to make it special." Claire stepped out into the crisp morning air, feeling invigorated. The town square was already bustling with activity as vendors set up their stalls and families began to arrive. The scent of freshly baked goods, roasted chestnuts, and hot cider filled the air, creating a festive atmosphere. Claire's first stop was the craft fair, where local artisans displayed their handmade goods. She marveled at the intricate quilts, beautiful pottery, and delicate jewelry. She chatted with the artists, learning about their techniques and the inspiration behind their creations. Each conversation added a rich layer to her article, highlighting the talent and creativity within the community. As the day progressed, Claire made her way to the pumpkin carving contest. The town square was filled with pumpkins of all shapes and sizes, each one carved into a unique and imaginative design. Children and adults alike were engrossed in their work, their faces lit up with concentration and joy. "Claire, over here!" Jenny called, waving her over. Claire smiled and walked over to where Jenny was helping a group of children carve their pumpkins. "These look amazing," Claire said, admiring the intricate designs. "The kids are really talented," Jenny replied. "We have some future artists in our midst." Claire snapped a few photos, capturing the concentration on the children's faces and the proud smiles as they completed their pumpkins. She knew these moments would add a personal touch to her article, showcasing the community spirit that made Maplewood so special. In the afternoon, Claire attended the pie-eating contest, a tradition that always drew a crowd. The contestants, from young children to seasoned adults, lined up at a long table, ready to dive into the freshly baked pies. The air was filled with laughter and cheers as the contest began, and Claire couldn't help but join in the fun. She found herself standing next to Mark, who was enthusiastically cheering for one of the contestants. "This is quite the event," she said, laughing. "It sure is," Mark replied. "The pie eating contest is always a highlight. It's all in good fun and brings everyone together." Claire watched as a young boy emerged victorious, his face covered in pie crust and filling. The crowd erupted in applause, and the boy grinned from ear to ear. It was moments like these that made Claire realize how much she had missed this sense of community. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the town, the festivities continued with a grand parade. Floats decorated with autumn leaves and lights made their way through the streets, accompanied by marching bands and dancers in colorful costumes. Claire marveled at the creativity and effort that had gone into each float, each one telling a story of its own. Mark found her amidst the crowd and handed her a cup of hot apple cider. "Enjoying the festival?" he asked. "Absolutely," Claire replied, taking a sip of the delicious cider. "This place is incredible. The people, the traditions, it's all so heartwarming." Mark smiled. "I'm glad you're enjoying it. Maplewood has a way of making everyone feel like they belong." The evening culminated in a spectacular fireworks display. Claire and Mark stood together in the town square, watching as the night sky lit up with bursts of color. The crowd, "Oh," Ed and "Ah," Ed in unison, their faces illuminated by the dazzling lights. As the final firework exploded in a shower of gold and silver, Claire felt a sense of contentment wash over her. She turned to Mark, her heart full. "Thank you for showing me around and making me feel so welcome," she said softly. "It's been my pleasure," Mark replied, his eyes warm. "I'm glad you're here, Claire. You're already a part of our community." Claire smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart that had nothing to do with the cider. She knew that her time in Maplewood was changing her in ways she hadn't expected. The town and its people were weaving their way into her heart, making her feel at home in a way she hadn't felt in years. As the crowd began to disperse, Claire and Mark strolled through the town square, enjoying the peacefulness of the evening. The festival had been a success, and Claire knew she had gathered more than enough material for her article. But more importantly, she had found a place that felt like home and people who felt like family. "Are you ready to head back?" Mark asked as they reached the inn. Claire nodded, feeling a sense of contentment she hadn't felt in a long time. "Yes, but I'm looking forward to tomorrow. There's still so much to see and do." Mark smiled. "Tomorrow, then. Sleep well, Claire." "Good night, Mark," she replied, watching as he walked away. She stood there for a moment, taking in the beauty of the town, before heading inside. As she settled into bed, Claire reflected on the day's events. The autumn festival had been everything she had hoped for and more. It was a celebration of community, tradition, and love, a perfect reflection of Maplewood itself. Claire drifted off to sleep with a smile on her face, knowing that her adventure in Maplewood was just beginning. Chapter 4: Falling for Each Other. The days following the autumn festival were filled with a sense of calm and contentment. Claire Williams found herself falling into a comfortable routine in Maplewood, spending her mornings interviewing townsfolk and her afternoons exploring the scenic beauty of the town. But it wasn't just the picturesque surroundings that were captivating her heart, it was Mark Taylor. Claire couldn't deny the growing connection between her and Mark. They spent more time together, sharing stories and laughter. Mark had a way of making her feel at ease, and she found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone in a long time. One crisp morning, Claire and Mark decided to go for a hike in Maplewood's famous Whispering Woods. The forest was a kaleidoscope of colors, with leaves crunching underfoot and the air filled with the earthy scent of autumn. "This place is magical," Claire said, taking in the beauty around her. "It is," Mark agreed. "I come here whenever I need to clear my mind. There's something about being surrounded by nature that's incredibly grounding." As they walked along the trail, Mark pointed out different types of trees and shared stories about the forest. Claire listened, captivated not just by his knowledge but by the passion in his voice. "Do you miss the city?" Mark asked after a while. Claire thought for a moment. "I thought I would," she admitted. "But being here, in Maplewood, I've realized how much I needed this change. It's given me a new perspective on what's important." Mark smiled. "I'm glad to hear that. Maplewood has a way of showing people what really matters." They continued their hike, the conversation flowing easily between them. Claire felt a warmth spreading through her, a growing affection for this man who had become so important to her in such a short time. That evening, Mark invited Claire to a bonfire at his friend Tom's farm. The night was cool, and the sky was clear, with stars twinkling like diamonds. As they arrived, Claire could hear the sounds of laughter and music, and the scent of roasting marshmallows filled the air. Tom greeted them with a wide grin. "Glad you could make it, Claire. Welcome to our little gathering." "Thanks for having me," Claire replied, smiling back. The bonfire was surrounded by friends and family, all enjoying the warmth and camaraderie. Claire felt a sense of belonging as she sat by the fire, listening to stories and joining in the laughter. Mark handed her a stick with a marshmallow on it. "Here, you can't come to a bonfire without roasting marshmallows." Claire laughed and took the stick, holding it over the flames. As the marshmallow turned golden brown, she glanced at Mark, who was watching her with a soft smile. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything." Mark's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "I'm just glad you're here." As the night wore on, Claire and Mark found themselves sitting a little apart from the group, the crackling fire casting a warm glow over them. They talked about their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets. Claire felt an emotional intimacy with Mark that she hadn't experienced in years. "You know," Mark said, his voice thoughtful, "I never expected to meet someone like you. You've brought a light into my life, Claire." Claire felt her heart swell. "I feel the same way about you," she admitted. "Being here, with you, has made me realize what I've been missing." Mark reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "Claire, Before he could finish, a burst of laughter from the group interrupted them, and they both turned to see what was happening. The moment was lost, but the feeling lingered. The following days were a whirlwind of shared experiences and growing emotions. Claire and Mark spent their time exploring the town, enjoying the local cuisine, and discovering hidden gems in Maplewood. They went apple picking at a nearby orchard, attended a charming local theater production, and even tried their hand at making maple syrup with the Thompsons. One evening, as they walked along the riverbank, Mark stopped and turned to Claire. "I've been wanting to ask you something," he said, his voice earnest. Claire's heart raced. "What is it? Would you consider staying in Maplewood longer? Maybe even making it your home?" Mark asked, his eyes searching hers. Claire was taken aback by the question. She had fallen in love with the town and the people, and most of all, with Mark. But the idea of leaving her life in the city, her career, and everything she had known was daunting. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I love it here, and I've loved every moment with you. But it's a big decision." Mark nodded, his expression understanding. "I know it is. I just wanted you to know that I care about you, Claire. A lot. And I want you to be happy, wherever that may be." Claire felt a rush of emotion. "I care about you too, Mark. More than I ever thought possible." They stood there, holding hands and looking out at the river. Claire knew that whatever decision she made, her heart was already deeply entwined with Mark's. The days ahead would bring clarity, but for now, she was content to be in this moment, falling for the man who had captured her heart. As the days turned into weeks, Claire found herself torn between her growing love for Mark and her responsibilities back in the city. The thought of leaving Maplewood and Mark filled her with a sense of loss, but she knew she had to face the reality of her situation. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the inn, watching the sun set over the town, Claire turned to Mark with a heavy heart. "I have to go back to the city," she said softly. Mark's face fell, but he nodded. "I understand. You have a life there." "But," Claire continued, "I don't want this to be the end. I want to find a way to make this work, Mark. Because I love you." Mark's eyes lit up with hope. "I love you too, Claire. And we'll find a way. We'll make it work." Claire smiled, feeling a sense of relief and joy. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that with Mark by her side, anything was possible. As they embraced, the leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, Claire felt a deep sense of peace. She had found love in Maplewood, and no matter where life took her, she knew that her heart would always belong to this charming town and the man who had made her feel truly at home. Chapter 5: A Twist of Fate. The morning sun cast long shadows across Maplewood as Claire Williams prepared to leave. Her time in the quaint town had been everything she'd hoped for and more. The thought of returning to the city brought a sense of bittersweet longing. She knew she would miss the people, the places, and most of all, Mark. But she also knew she had responsibilities and a career that awaited her in the city. Betty and Harold, the kind innkeepers, helped her load her bags into the car. "You come back and visit us soon, dear," Betty said, hugging her tightly. "Maplewood will always welcome you." "Thank you, Betty. I promise I'll be back," Claire replied, her voice thick with emotion. As Claire drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror, taking one last look at the town that had captured her heart. She felt a lump in her throat but pushed forward, determined to face whatever lay ahead. Back in the city, Claire quickly fell into the rhythm of her old life. The fast-paced environment, the deadlines, and the constant hustle were a stark contrast to the serene, slower pace of Maplewood. She threw herself into her work, but her thoughts constantly drifted back to Mark and the idyllic days they had shared. One evening, as Claire was working late in her apartment, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Janet, her editor. "Claire, I've got a new assignment for you," Janet said without preamble. "A major exposé on a corrupt real estate mogul. It's big, and I need my best journalist on it." Claire sighed. This was the kind of assignment that could make or break her career, but her heart wasn't in it. "Sure, Janet. I'll get on it." As Claire hung up the phone, she felt a wave of frustration. She missed the simplicity and fulfillment she'd found in Maplewood. She missed Mark. A few weeks passed, and Claire's investigation consumed her. She spent countless hours digging through documents, conducting interviews, and piecing together the story. One afternoon, as she was reviewing some particularly damning evidence, her phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number, but she answered it anyway. "Hello, Claire? This is Tom from Maplewood." Claire's heart skipped a beat. "Tom? Is everything okay?" "Well, not exactly," Tom said, his voice heavy with worry. "There's been an accident. Mark was helping set up for the winter festival and had a fall. He's in the hospital." Claire felt a chill run through her. "Is he going to be okay?" "They're not sure yet. He's stable but it's serious," Tom replied. "I thought you'd want to know." Claire's mind raced. Without hesitation, she made up her mind. "Thank you for telling me, Tom. I'm coming back to Maplewood." Claire dropped everything and rushed to the hospital in Maplewood. The drive felt like an eternity, her thoughts consumed with worry for Mark. When she finally arrived, she found Tom and several other townsfolk in the waiting room, their faces etched with concern. Claire, you made it, Tom said, embracing her. How is he? Claire asked, her voice trembling. He's in surgery, Tom replied. They're doing everything they can. Claire sat down, her heart heavy with fear and uncertainty. She had only just found Mark, and the thought of losing him was unbearable. As the hours ticked by, Claire found herself praying for his recovery, willing him to be okay. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor finally emerged. Mark Taylor's family, he called out. That's us, Tom said, standing up. The doctor approached them, his expression serious but hopeful. The surgery went well. He's stable now, but he has a long road to recovery ahead. Claire felt a wave of relief wash over her. Can we see him? One at a time, for now, the doctor said. He's still very weak. Claire nodded and waited her turn. When she finally entered Mark's room, her heart broke at the sight of him lying there, pale and bandaged. She approached his bedside and gently took his hand. Mark, it's me, Claire, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm here. Mark's eyes fluttered open, and a faint smile touched his lips. Claire, he murmured weakly. You came back. Of course I did, Claire replied, squeezing his hand gently. I couldn't stay away. I love you, Mark. I love you too, Mark whispered, his eyes shining with tears. Thank you for being here. Over the next few weeks, Claire stayed in Maplewood, helping Mark with his recovery. The townsfolk rallied around them, offering support and encouragement. Claire felt a deep sense of gratitude for the community that had welcomed her with open arms. As Mark's strength slowly returned, Claire found herself more in love with him than ever. They spent their days together, talking about their dreams and plans for the future. Claire knew she couldn't go back to the city and leave him behind. One evening, as they sat by the fire in Mark's cozy living room, he took her hand in his. Claire, I don't want you to leave again, he said softly. I want you to stay here, with me. Claire looked into his eyes, seeing the love and sincerity there. I don't want to leave either, she replied. Maplewood is my home now. You are my home. Mark smiled, pulling her close. Then let's build our life here, together. As the winter festival approached, Claire and Mark worked side by side, helping to set up the decorations and activities. The town square was transformed into a winter wonderland, with twinkling lights and festive displays. On the night of the festival, Claire and Mark stood together, watching as the first snowflakes began to fall. The town was filled with laughter and joy, a testament to the strength and resilience of the community. Claire looked up at Mark, her heart full. I'm so glad I came back, she said softly. Me too, Mark replied, kissing her gently. Me too. As they stood there, surrounded by friends and the beauty of the season, Claire knew she had found her true home. No matter what twists of fate lay ahead, she and Mark would face them together, their love stronger than ever. Chapter 6, Harvest of Love. The arrival of spring in Maplewood was a sight to behold. The snow melted away, revealing lush greenery and blooming flowers. The town seemed to come alive with a renewed energy, and Claire Williams felt the same sense of renewal in her heart. She had found her place in Maplewood and was ready to embrace the future with Mark. As the days grew warmer, the town began preparations for the annual Spring Harvest Festival. It was a celebration of new beginnings, a fitting metaphor for Claire and Mark's journey. Claire threw herself into the preparations, eager to contribute to the event that had become so special to her. One sunny afternoon, Claire and Mark visited Tom's farm to help with the preparations. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blossoming flowers and the sound of birds singing. Claire felt a sense of peace and happiness that she hadn't known before. Claire, can you help me with these crates? Mark called, waving her over. Of course, she replied, joining him by the barn. They worked together, their movements synchronized as if they had been doing this for years. As they stacked the crates, Claire glanced at Mark, a smile playing on her lips. Can you believe how much has changed in just a few months? Mark looked at her, his eyes filled with love. It's been an incredible journey. And I wouldn't have it any other way. The day of the Spring Harvest Festival arrived, and the town square was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Stalls were set up, offering fresh produce, handmade crafts, and delicious treats. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the hum of excited conversation. Claire and Mark walked hand in hand through the bustling square, greeting friends and neighbors. They stopped at various stalls, sampling the offerings and enjoying the festive atmosphere. At the center of the square, a stage had been set up for the evening's performances. Claire's heart swelled with pride as she watched the townsfolk come together to celebrate. This was her home now, and these were her people. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the town, Claire and Mark joined the crowd gathered around the stage. The mayor stepped up to the microphone, his voice booming over the speakers. Welcome, everyone, to the Spring Harvest Festival, he announced. This festival is a celebration of new beginnings and the strength of our community. Tonight, we honor the spirit of togetherness that makes Maplewood so special. The crowd cheered, and Claire felt a lump in her throat. She glanced at Mark, who squeezed her hand reassuringly. After a series of performances by local musicians and dancers, the mayor returned to the stage. And now, I have a special announcement, he said, smiling. Mark Taylor, would you please come up here? Claire looked at Mark in surprise as he made his way to the stage. Her heart raced as she wondered what was happening. Mark took the microphone, his eyes searching the crowd until they found Claire. Claire, could you join me up here? He asked. Claire's heart pounded as she made her way to the stage, feeling the eyes of the entire town on her. She stood next to Mark, her hand trembling in his. Claire, Mark began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, these past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've brought so much joy and love into my world, and I can't imagine my life without you. Tears filled Claire's eyes as she realized what was happening. Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a beautiful ring, its diamonds sparkling in the evening light. Claire Williams, Mark said, his voice shaking slightly, will you marry me? The crowd gasped and then fell silent, waiting for her response. Claire felt a rush of emotions, love, joy, and certainty. She smiled through her tears and nodded. Yes, Mark. Yes, I will marry you, she replied, her voice full of love. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause as Mark slipped the ring onto her finger. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, sealing their promise of a future together. The rest of the evening was a blur of celebration and congratulations. Friends and neighbors surrounded Claire and Mark, offering their best wishes and sharing in their joy. Claire felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support from the community that had become her family. As the night wore on, Claire and Mark found a quiet moment alone by the river. They sat on a bench, holding hands, and watching the stars twinkle above. I can't believe this is real, Claire said softly, resting her head on Mark's shoulder. It feels like a dream. It's real, Mark replied, kissing the top of her head. And it's just the beginning. We have a lifetime of adventures ahead of us. Claire smiled, feeling a sense of peace and contentment. She knew that whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together. Maplewood had given her more than just a story, it had given her a home, a family, and a love that would last a lifetime. As the first light of dawn began to break, Claire and Mark made their way back to the town square, where the festival was winding down. They stood hand in hand, watching as the townsfolk began to clean up, their hearts full of gratitude and hope. Welcome home, Mark whispered, pulling her close. Claire looked up at him, her eyes shining with love. I'm home, she replied. Together, they walked into the future, ready to harvest the love and happiness that awaited them in their beautiful town of Maplewood.